Good morning and welcome to the HR Tech Fit Check 5 must know tips for selecting a HR tech with confidence. I'm Katie Mangraviti, your host for today. I'm joined by Rachel Lehman and Paul Broughton, and together we're going to walk through a practical framework to kickstart your journey with choosing a HR tech partner. Rachel, Paul, welcome. Thanks so much for being here today. Rach, do you mind giving us a quick intro of your role and why you're joining us today?
Sure. Thanks, Katie. Good morning, everyone. My name's Rachel Lehman. I work for Pinpoint HRM. I've worked there for nearly 8 years now. My role there is as a senior advisory consultant, and my day job is to work with clients who come to us to assist in helping them select HR tech. So I spend a lot of time in the tech market, understanding what the players are doing, and then helping align our customers' requirements to the vendors that are and products that are available in the market. Thanks, Katie.
Thanks, Rach. So you're a true expert in what we're about to talk about today.
We'll see.
We'll see. All right, Paul, do you mind giving us a bit of intro into your world?
I'd love to. Good morning, Katie. Great to see yourself and Rachel again. Paul Brown, I'm the managing director here for Cornerstone in Asia Pacific. My role is really to drive the go-to-market. Worked for Cornerstone for 15 and a half years. I've been here for quite a while and had the pleasure of working across, of course, this region, but also the United States and Europe, supporting customers on the journey of assessing technology, and been in obviously HR tech with Cornerstone, but even more broadly over about 20 years. So hopefully I can add some perspective from the vendor side, I suppose, Katie.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, thank you again for both being here. So, your organization has decided it needs a new piece of HR tech. Where do you start? What do you do? Do you jump on Google, search for the best system, ask ChatGPT? Do you call a colleague or a peer and ask what they're using? The challenge is really cutting through the marketing and actually finding a solution that is the right fit for your organization. And that's what we're going to focus on today. Today, we're going to walk you through 5 key elements to focus on when setting out your evaluation criteria. The 5 elements are the strategic fit, functional fit, tech fit, cultural fit, and commercial fit. Let's dive into it. The first one is the strategic fit. Mapping your HCM capabilities to your future state and your organizational growth strategies. Rach, you recently worked with one of our clients, ECMS, on a vendor evaluation process. In the podcast we did with them recently, they spoke about how critical it was to define their desired HR future state and map this to the HR maturity model that we walked them through. Can you talk to us about how we approached this with them and why it was such a crucial step in the process for them?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think a lot of clients, so it's funny that you referenced, do we look at Google? Do we talk to colleagues? A lot of clients come to us after they've done that and they're more confused than ever because someone's using this product, someone's using that product, and they really don't understand the difference. Um, it's also important to understand the journey that you're going on before you even start thinking about tech. A lot of companies will go straight to, let's go and see what the market has to offer. And what's important is to actually understand the journey that you as a company are going on. What's the business strategy? What's the supporting HR strategy to that business strategy? And then how does the tech underlay and support though you achieving both of those strategies? So it's very different if you're a company that just wants to automate some paperwork, and get your HR advisors out of the mire of leave requests and job change requests and things like that, versus you're a company that wants to be an employer of choice. You want to have engagement scores through the roof. The type of products that you would look at would be very different, but your business and HR strategy is going to be very different, in both of those journeys. So like any journey, it's important to understand where you're going and how you're going to get there. So for ECMS, they are a childcare provider in Melbourne, with more than 70 childcare uh, branches around the city. They had a very strong strategic focus on both recruitment and learning. So they're in a very hard recruitment market to get staff and attract staff. So they spend a lot of time in that strategic pillar. they also have a strategy of lifelong learning, not only for the children in their care, but also for their staff. They want their staff to stay at ECMS, to have a real journey in their employment with them. It's a market where a lot of people move around. So they wanted to be able to, retain their staff with a lifelong learning experience. So when we talked to them from the beginning, it was really clear that they needed a product that was going to offer them deep strategic value and also functionality in both those pillars of recruitment and learning. So we talk through what we call our HR maturity model, which is sort of a 5-point model that sort of talks to, maybe what I said before. Are we just trying to automate a few things and get some data, or are we really trying to drive HR being a strategic business partner to the business and driving those more strategic outcomes for the business? So it's quite a journey, and identifying where you are and where you're trying to get to is key before you even consider tech.
So true and so fundamental. With that, is it quite hard to pull people back from not realizing that they need a 5 for everything?
It is. It's one of the things I have fun with when I'm working with my clients, but it's also a challenge. I remember I worked with a client who um, really was adamant that they needed to get to a 5 on a 5-point scale on in the area of performance. And right now, they weren't really even doing performance reviews. They would have these little check-ins, and you would apply a smiley face or a sad face as to how you were feeling about your job and your performance. And so for them to go on a journey to get to a 5 from a 1 or even maybe a 0 of where they were, that's an enormous cultural change. It's an enormous cultural change. And um, tech isn't gonna change that piece of culture, right? Putting in a performance system isn't gonna change whether your managers can have good conversations or if your employees are engaged in that journey. So, yes, I spend a lot of time talking to them about, do you really, really need to be a 5? Because when we're talking about a 5, we're talking the big end of town in terms of tech, potentially. So it's important to align. You don't wanna be paying for features that you're not gonna use, that you're not gonna grow into in the near term. So really getting customers to be realistic about where they are and what the next 4 to 5 years looks like is key. So, yeah, I do spend a bit of time adding a dose of reality and sort of questioning, do we really need to be a 5? But it's always done respectfully and with a bit of fun, so
That's a good point about the next 4 to 5 years, because I imagine that some people, may also kinda get bogged down in what they need today. So, Paul, what do you see is important for organizations in regards to maybe not always thinking they're a 5, but still planning for what they need in the future rather than what they need today?
Yeah, it is the right question, Katie and Rachel. And what I love about Rachel's point of view is from a vendor's perspective, there's nothing worse than the initial conversation being show me a demo. Now, the right partner for a customer is going to be one that says, let's take a step back and let's understand what are the business objectives, how do the people priorities and initiatives relate to those objectives, and then what are the outcomes at the end of this, right? So tech is the enabler of that journey. So it's really important to just make sure that the partner that they choose, the vendor, and can meet those future-proof goals, right? It can be that short-term pain that they're thinking, oh, let me resolve this today. Sure, absolutely important to check that box, but what does it look like mid, long term in terms of the people strategy? I mean, you both know very well how much time, effort, organizational resources, and bandwidth goes into a project like this. You don't want to be doing it, every year, certainly. So you want to think, okay, I've got what I need today, but what is that end state look like 3, 4, 5 years down the road, and make sure that you've got the right technology that can enable that journey.
So, as a business, kind of, we've decided what we need to achieve strategically from a HR perspective, and how do we then functionally align what we need to achieve that? So, the next one is functional fit, which is a business truly focusing on their outcomes and how do they differentiate between the vendors from a functional perspective. Rach, as kind of I mentioned in my opening, there's so much noise out there in the market from a marketing perspective with, AI, everyone saying they need AI, mobile, the trends of what a business needs from a HR tech perspective. How can organizations cut through that noise and figure out what do they truly need from a functional fit perspective?
It's really difficult, and I'm sure we've all been involved in an RFP process, so we have a spreadsheet with line by line by line requirements of, can your learning system do this, or can your recruitment system do this? And to a certain extent, um, all vendors will tell you they can do everything. So you might get that functional requirement spreadsheet back from 5 vendors, and it looks like they can all do everything. So then how do you determine, I thought this spreadsheet would help us make a decision, but it's actually just confused us. And so a lot of the vendors' products can essentially do. It's not that the vendors are being inaccurate when they say they can do it, it's how they do it. So, at the lower end of the market, yes, we do performance reviews. And at the top end of the market, yes, we do performance reviews. But how do you need those performance reviews to happen? Is it a 360 review that needs external customers to give feedback to your staff? Or is it just a checkbox activity to say, yeah, we've done a performance review? Like there's very different functionalities. So when I'm working with clients, what I'm listening for is the real challenges in their environment, the use cases that are particular to them. We've got, maybe a law firm that has partners that don't want to be involved in performance reviews, or they have a completely different performance reviews for their partner versus the rest of the staff. Do we have a system that can offer different processes for different cohorts? So making sure we capture those unique use cases by client. And certainly in the area of payroll and WFM, it gets a little bit trickier because there's a lot of complexity in those areas by business. In the HR space, the way that you want to push out learning, or the way that you need to run your recruitment strategy, all of those things can be very unique to businesses. So making sure that we document those, we capture those requirements. So rather than going through and saying, does your system allow us to get approval for a job requisition? Does your system allow us to push to multiple job boards? All those sorts of questions. Let's put it in a real life scenario to say, we struggle to get resources into our business. We want to do these amazing advertising campaigns, and it means we're going to have talent pools, and we need this and that and the other. So putting it into the context of your business and your requirements and your needs, and then making sure we articulate that and have the vendors demo it. Not just say they can do it, show us that you can meet these requirements that are unique to us. And also thinking about not just today's requirements, but where we're going to be in 3 to 5 years as well. Because as Paul said, these projects take time. You don't want to be back in market in 5 years' time. You want to make sure you've got a vendor and a product that's going to grow with you.
Rachel, I think you make such an important point when you talk about show it. Right? When I think through customers that run an evaluation the right way, you're spot on, right? You absolutely should be showing it, to the point of, to piggyback on your performance review example, hand over the form and let's see if you're going from paper to technology, if you want to keep the same process and form, then the vendor that committed to you will pull that into the system and actually show it to you. Now, my next point would be, a really good partner for you in that may also say no, and no in a couple of ways. So I'd be really worried if during an evaluation, every answer is yes, especially during the demo, because usually there's a few things that a product can't do. And so if you're only getting yeses, maybe it's a simple use case, and that's the case, of course. Very rare in my years of doing this is that truly the outcome. So when a vendor doing a demo says, no, we can't do that, that's actually a good sign that there's true transparency and you're getting the reality of things. Now, again, that no leads to my next point. Sometimes the answer is no, and it's a good reason, because what another a vendor or as a partner from HR technology should do is say, we don't do that. And here's why, because we actually have best practices which suggests that there's a better way of doing it. And so my other advice would be open functionally to different ways of like different business processes, different ways of approaching a problem through the technology, because SaaS providers like ourselves and many of the others out there we've aggregated our innovation across the world, across feedback from our customers. So what we do bring to the discussion as well is here's another way of thinking about what you're trying to achieve. Are you willing to consider a different or a better way, in our opinion, of doing that? So I think use cases are great, and then a partner in the evaluation to say, hey, have you thought about doing this a little bit differently? And to your point of the how, watch it in the demo. Like, is it easy to use? Is it a unified experience where I don't feel like I'm fragmented on where I'm going? There's components like that that I think are really important as someone thinks about their end user population.
Mm. I couldn't agree more, Paul. Now is, this time when you're selecting tech is the perfect time to be reassessing your processes and how you do things. And because you don't want to pick up the way we've always done it and put it in a brand new shiny toy, you're probably doing things the way you're doing things because you don't have a best practice system to support you. And so you don't want to stick to your guns and say, no, no, this is the way we've always done it. We need the system to be able to build it this way and act this way. So to Paul's point, you want to be open and flexible to saying, well, actually, maybe there is a better way to do it, and we can, throw away our old processes or evolve them into a more modern way about going about things that these tech solutions will support.
100% agree. There's nothing worse than someone trying to replicate a paper-based process in an online system because it's not going to be the same way because you're getting further functionality, more enhancements, and a better probably experience for your employees if you achieve the same outcome but potentially get there in a different way.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we've kind of had a look at strategic fit, functional fit, and the next one is technology fit. So, Paul, with technology evolving so quickly right now, how can organizations figure out which vendor truly aligns with them from a technology perspective?
It's such a big question, especially in the world today where those AI is paramount to pretty much every discussion that I'm involved in. It's going to be through that lens of how is AI a part of the experience in your platform, and what does that look like today, let alone into the future, because it's moving at such an incredibly rapid pace. So I think making sure that you've got the vendor evaluation that you're running involves a lens of innovation, R&D. What does the release cycle look like? Let's have a look at the roadmap. Now, those vendors should have at least a 12-month. To get further out than that, it's a little bit risky in the sense of things are pivoting so quickly. A 12-month plan is today really a best practice around technology because of the pace of change. Moreover, ask them, how do you innovate? How much of that is, people sitting in a room from the vendor side versus what I think is most important is listening to your customer community. You've got best practice experts leveraging the system, thinking day in and day out, hey, if it could do this, it would be so much better. If you would tweak this and optimize that, we'd have such a better use of the system, more value, more insight, you name it. So I think that journey that they'll go on with you in terms of your feedback, do they actually take that into account? They should be measuring of functional release. How much of that is actually customer driven is important. What does that engagement look like? Is it one-to-one? Is there a community of shared ideas? Is there access to the product team, product managers, where you can actually have a voice in what's coming? I think is incredibly important. And then if you think through, functionally things, we're talking about HR tech here, we're talking about AI. It should obviously have deep AI capabilities from multiple persona perspectives, from an administrator when you're thinking about efficiency, from an end user. How do I leverage AI to have a different experience that's conversational, that's giving me insights? It should be using machine learning to personalize it, right? Like if you think through the lens of skills, that's a big part of our focus at Cornerstone. It's what do we know about you, your interests? What has happened in the past that we can dictate what's relevant for you in terms of your career growth and career pathing, mobility, personalized learning experiences. Think of a candidate's experience now with an organization. They're going to expect, what does onboarding look like for me? Was my recruitment process leveraging SMS and AI and all these different components that are really important as they reflect on the brand? And of course, those first, people say 6 months of a new hire. I debate that and say more like potentially 6 days, 6 weeks in terms of, are they going to stay with you? How do they feel about entering the new business? So there's all these. Now I'm getting more into that engagement retention component thing, which is the most important to the C-suite, but that comes through in the technology and the journey that they're on. So there's a lot here to unpack, Katie. I probably said a mouthful here in terms of things to consider, but I think if I put it all into one theme, it would be partnership through innovation, right? There should be transparency, there should be a voice for the customer, and it should be happening at a really quick pace, especially with AI and skills being the core driver in HR tech, at least as we see it.
And I'm going to add to that, Katie. I think a lot of customers come to us and AI is front of mind, but they don't really know what they need or what they want. They just, it's a, I think a lot of companies are still trying to figure out what AI means for their business. And they know that they should be looking at a vendor partner that's got AI in their platform, but they're not really sure how they want to use it, how they want to implement it in their own business. So I think so much of AI capability at a vendor level is based on the culture and the vibe of the organization and the data set and the data model that the product is built on. You can get a very good sense from vendors where they are in their tech journey, if they're a modern company or if they're not a modern company, right? That comes through really clearly when you start talking to them and start understanding the culture of the company. So, if you're going in thinking it's got to have AI, but we don't really know what, that's fine. We do want to see that the vendor has been thinking about AI and they're starting to build some of these modern things into their platform, and we're all going on a journey in this space. You'll fundamentally see the vendors that haven't got their head around that yet, and they're not modern and they're not moving with their clients' requirements. So, AI, as Paul has said, can be a lot of things. It can be, will it help my end users write a smart goal? Will it help our recruiters write a better job ad? Or is it actually going to help our data analysts surface real insights into what our staff are doing and how we need to engage them and move forward? Is it going to give us those sorts of reports and insights into our business? So, yeah, it will come across in the conversations as you engage with vendors about whether or not they're on that, complementing tech journey with you.
It's such a great point. And I think the other part of that, the AI conversations, Rachel, that I'm seeing a lot of now, which is the right conversation, is how has it been built, like in terms of bias, and the models that it's using? Because it's a very powerful, but you've got to be very thoughtful. I think we've seen some people move at a really quick pace in this space, but they're retracting or making mistakes because they're not thinking through those sort of mechanisms, and also having human in the loop is a big part of what we think about too, where sure, yeah, I can speed things up, but if the smart goal is a great example of it, by the nature of it, it has a human in the loop, right? Where you review it, right? But it fills it out for you. And similarly, that should be a big part of the philosophy, I think, as vendors roll this out, is that trusted verify is one way of saying it, I suppose, around AI specifically.
I 100% agree. Ethical AI, ensuring there's always a human in the loop. We need to move, and continue to move with the tech advancements, but we don't want to remove the importance of ensuring that the right activities are completed by the right people. I feel like the next point is so fundamental, but often organizations get distracted by the flashy features and flashy marketing and forget to really assess cultural alignment, cultural fit. Assessing what's the vibe you're actually getting from the vendors team you're working with. Can you really see yourself working with this organization for 3 to 5 years? Rach, when working with clients, what areas do you help them focus on to assess cultural fit?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it is really important because, yeah, especially with cloud-based solutions, you are touching base with these vendors on a monthly, daily basis. Especially if it's a monthly subscription, you're making a decision every month to renew and continue in this partnership. So, It's not an upfront purchase, we install it and we forget about it. It's, the releases are coming out every 3, 4, 6 months, depending on the vendor you go with. You've got to engage, you've got to understand the technology and keep up with it. So you're always interacting with this vendor, and you can get a good sense of the vendor through the sales cycle. There's some vendors that it's all about the sale, and the minute you sign the contract, they're MIA somewhere. So, making sure through that sales cycle, you meet the people that are going to be your contacts as you move forward. Who's your customer success manager? Who heads up the support team? Who's going to be your account manager? Is there a good vibe between you and them? It's hard to put parameters around it, but when you go through this process, whether you like this vendor, whether they align with your values as an organization, and whether you can successfully see yourself working with them. If a vendor is all about the sale or is dismissive of your concerns, I guess it's like a first date. What are the red flags? What are the things that you just go, you know what? I know it's only a little thing, but that didn't sit right with me. And can we address that? But listen to those gut things, listen to those things, and think about what it's going to be like dealing with this organization for 5, 7 years. And is that right for you?
I like that example of a first date. It is so true. You are kind of dating in the sales process. Uh, I guess, it's also not just about the vendor, and I'm sure, Paul, you might have some points to add about the vendor relationship as well. But I'm also curious from your perspective about the partner who's going to be doing the implementation. They're actually the organization who's truly going to help you hand in hand get that system live and configured so you're ready for success for the next 3 to 5 years. Paul, what's your recommendation in regards to assessing that cultural fit of the implementation partner as well?
Yeah, I'll take it from both angles. So I think it's so important right now. And Rachel, you mentioned, I think, a preeminent point where I see customers potentially go wrong in the evaluation is that they don't engage with the post-sale ecosystem. To your point, like meet the AN, the account manager, meet the client success manager. Like, and those people should be proactively brought in by the right vendor. And I don't like that term because I see it more as like a partnership, because it really is a relationship, right? And I think the most important thing that I try to focus on in my role is being at our best when things are at their worst, and because that's gonna happen, right? There will be something happens in implementation, or 2 years down the line, there's some problem that arises. Like how quickly do those get resolved? Do they care? Do they lean in? Is communication strong? And you'll find out a lot of that by instinct. To your point of the dating analogy, I always they'll focus on the wedding, focus on the marriage. What does the long-term relationship look like with that provider? But yeah, and how do you find out? Like, how will they resolve the things? You'll see things through the sales process. How proactive? What's communication like? Are they trying to bring resources into the discussion? A lot of times, like my team personally will say, "Hey, let us introduce us to more people in the organization." That may sometimes is misperceived as salesy, but it's actually about relationship and knowing each other and being aligned. Because if there are issues, I'll definitely get involved, and I want to know the people I'll be working with. So I think that's super important, that message. Then when I think through the partner delivery, there is a relationship there too. It's kind of like when you're dating and you say, how does that person treat the waiter, right? The person serving you. Like, that's such a good instinct to say, are they kind to those people? The partner and the vendor should be super tight, right? As well, working hand in hand, how they treat each other. And the partner should have depth, right? In terms of from the industry, depth in terms of the technology, the people actually implementing it. The partner side should be experts in the system, done it many times. Is there a high level of certification and training that a company like Cornerstone provides the partner ecosystem? I'll ask those questions too. And then the vendor, so to speak, should stay across the project. So we've got great partners, of course. Pinpoint being one of our best, and we stay with you right throughout that delivery process. Kind of just being there, as the organization to support if there are any questions, anything that pops up where we can help or assist is really important. And then having technical, I think, resources and capabilities, things, data migration, integrations where needed, and of course, post sale support options as well, like outsourced administration. A lot of our customers, aren't abundant, let's say it that way, in terms of their internal resources. So is there a capability to supplement that and help them where they may need it? Or what happens if your core admin or two, one of them's out on leave, the other one somehow gets sick? Like, is there a capability to say, hey, can you come in and help us for this period of time because we're having some internal challenges to run the system, not at the fault of the system, but just something like that that's happened. So a lot of people don't think about that moment or that need, but I think it's another question to ask the partner. Do you have those sort of support mechanisms for us if they ever arise?
The other thing I'd add to that is I think it's really important to do your reference checks. Speak to customers who are living with that vendor and are in a partnership with that vendor, and what does it look and feel like. And then the other thing that might just add in here, and it might be a bit cheeky, but we've talked a little bit about the vendor and the partner being the right fit. But you as a client have a responsibility to be a good client too. So Paul kind of touched on making sure you've got the right resources on the project, etc. If I think back to the project we did with ECMS, they were the most extraordinary customer. They took on board the advice of resourcing the project correctly, and we know this is the number one reason why that projects fall over is not having enough resources on your side as the client. If you don't have a project manager and you don't have a business analyst and you don't have someone around the change processes and you don't have a system administrator, there's these key roles that need to be resourced. It doesn't necessarily need to be a new headcount, but somebody needs to be focused on these key roles. There's releases coming out every 3, 4, 6 months. Someone at your side has to be focused on this. You can't ignore those releases and 3 years later say, this product doesn't suit our requirements anymore. It's not keeping up with market trends. You have a responsibility in a SaaS relationship to be a good customer, to be doing all the things you need to do to be keeping your instance modern and fresh and be in touch with the vendor. So right from the outset, you want to be going into this in a cohesive way. I see a lot of customers go into these processes almost in a combative way with the vendor. We're going to get the best deal and they're going to come to the table. And that's not how, yes, we want to get the best commercial deal, but that's not going to be helpful if you're going in a combative way. You want to pick a partner and work with that partner to a successful outcome. And I think ECMS is, a shining light of that in the way that they manage their project.
Just to double click on Williams. There's so much wisdom in that, Rachel. One is, I think your point on references, that's spot on, right? And that's how you get insight into that. When problems arise, how do you deal with them? I mean, you'll see behavioral things in the process, the evaluation process, but that's so important. And then having really effective lists of questions as you go into that discussion, right? That it's so important in terms of understanding what that's really going to look like in the relationship is really key. And another, maybe I'll share a bit of a secret for those of you out there commercially working with folks like myself and my team to get the best deal. Rachel, you nailed it. Is actually working in partnership, being transparent, saying, you'll get to a point of preference. You get the best deal by actually telling your vendor, hey, we really like your solution, like your team. Here's where we need to be to make this happen. And if it's a good vendor, transparently, they'll get there with you. If it's within reason and there's mutual commitment, that's the easiest way to get what you want commercially, is to be transparent like that. Now, a lot of customers don't think that way, but that is in reality how you get the best deal, so to speak. So use that.
Good
tip. A secret extra tip. Rach, what you said about kind of the client, the tech vendor and the partner, it really is all 3 parties coming together and truly working together in a partnership is what sees the most successful tech implementations. It can't just be the vendor, it can't just be the partner, it can't just be the client. All three parties working in harmony is what we see as the most successful outcomes here. 100% agree. All right, we're coming to the end. We've got our last kind of element that we want to talk about, which is the commercial fit. So how can HR make sure the executive team really understand the true value in this investment? It's not a small investment quite often for organizations. It's a really large investment. Paul, what's your advice? How can organizations work with their executives and their board to communicate the value that this tech transformation is going to bring to them?
It's such an important question. I think the first thing is any of the vendors you're looking at should be able to support you on this journey, whether it's like value realization, resources, understanding what the goals and objectives are of the company, and then bringing industry benchmarks, insights, and helping you generate board ready value. And that should be something that you discuss with them and how they support you do that. Now, when you think through the C-suite, so to speak, there'll be different angles, right? All of them will come through an angle of either saving money or making money. It's that simple. But how do you then unpack that? There will be employee engagement, which is really about retention and productivity. So what's your cost of turnover look like? What is your turnover rate? On the sales side, we're talking about a lot of different metrics that they should look at it. Revenue per employee. It'll vary, of course, by industry. A lot of the customers we'll talk to, the initial discussion will be, what are your core metrics as a business that you measure as it pertains to your people? How do they align to your long-term business objectives? And we'll unpack, how we believe our solution and what they're looking at will help drive those specific metrics. So we should enable you to be effective in that conversation and even join you if that makes sense. Moreover, there'll be a cadence of this. It's not a one-time thing. It may be at point of purchase, but then there should be a quarterly, if not semi-annual engagement where you're revisiting those outcomes that you were specifically looking to drive in that discussion. So there's quite a bit. We talked about AI and automation and efficiency. That's obviously part of the discussion as well. But it's absolutely paramount that I would suggest anyone this as you go into an evaluation like this, start with the C-suite and what their expectations are. What are the business outcomes, the strategies? Because this is a unique software that Katie just mentioned, because it touches every employee. A lot of other applications that a company purchases, at Cornerstone, we have over 100 SaaS applications that we use internally. Not every one of them touches every employee. Salesforce, everyone knows Salesforce. A lot of times that only touches the go-to-market team, doesn't touch everybody, right? And there's a lot of applications out there that are business unit focused or for proportions of the organization versus every employee. So an HR technology solution is super important to the business and has that unique attribute where everyone engages with it.
Yeah. And I'd agree. Paul, the conversation that you're having is, of a strategic organization that understands strategically how these platforms are going to shift the dial. I find it quite frustrating when I work with clients and the first thing the C-suite says is, where are the headcount savings going to be? If we put this system in, how many heads out of the HR team can I expect? And I go straight into a conversation about it's not about reducing your headcount. It might be about changing their focus. It might be about, you might have some really great HR resources there, incredibly frustrated because what they're doing is manually processing paperwork, where what they'd really like to be doing is partnering with the business and helping them make strategic change for the business. So, it might be that you have the same headcount. They might be doing different things, or it might be different people on the journey. You might have some, um, less skilled HR people because you are in the mire of that manual journey, and they might not be the people you end up with when you become more strategic. But it's really about working with a client to help them understand the strategic. I know I've said strategic 17 times now, but that journey that you're going to go on. It's if you're down here saying, save me some money, this isn't going to be a great project because these projects are expensive. Let's be honest. There's a project team that needs to be stood up. Forget the cost of the product. to transform. This is a transformation journey, and to go on that journey is going to cost money. And if we've got a C-suite that's focused on where's my headcount saving, HR is a cost, a cost center. I just want to get cost out of that center. You tell me we're going to spend all this money on licensing and implementation. I want 2 headcounts out of the team. That's not going to work. That's an environment. That's a combative environment for an HR team to thrive in and be strategic. So, sometimes you are pushing the proverbial uphill. When we talk to clients who understand that the bottom line of revenue can actually be affected by employee engagement, and we want to drive employee engagement. We want our employees to have a great employment experience here. And even if they leave us, we want them to talk about what a great experience they had with us. In those sorts of cultural environments, these projects are easier to get approval for. They're easier to, you know, cement that alignment between the business strategy and the HR strategy and the tech strategy that needs to support it. So, and that again draws us back to the maturity model. If you're just trying to automate some things, you might be down here at the bottom end of the market where you just need a small system to automate things. But if you want to go on that strategic journey, you need a partner and a product that's going to go with you and help you on that journey.
I feel like this takes us all the way back to point 1, Rach. If the organization truly defines strategically what they're looking to
Yep.
achieve with this transformation and can align what HR tech will help them get there, the business case almost writes itself.
Yeah. You can't, as an HR manager, you can't push this uphill, right? It's got to align with the business strategy. It can't be about my team don't want to do all this manual work anymore. It's about my team needs to support the business, and this HR transformation is actually a business transformation and a business project. It's not about, removing headcount or just automating a few things. So yeah, the understanding your journey, the business's journey at the front end will help you align the tech at the back end.
At the back end, yeah. Well, that brings us to the end. Any final thoughts, Rachel or Paul, before I wrap us up?
Feels like we've been talking for a while. Any final thoughts, Paul?
Oh gosh, I think I just hope there was some nugget, if not many, in this for people that are going on this journey. I think it's an exciting project to take on, but I loved your points, Rachel. This isn't an exercise in reduction of headcount. I'm sure you see it as much, if not more, than I do. I have deep appreciation and respect for all the L&D HR departments I've gotten to work with over the years, because if there's one shared attribute or trait that they all have, is that they're not abundantly resourced. They're doing yeoman's work, putting in huge hours with a commitment to the business and employees to make their lives better. I think it's such a great team to work with, and if anything, giving them the right tools to get to those outcomes, to your point, can then augment their roles and allow them to be more strategic. There's no thought in my mind that it's ever really like a replacement of role, right? It's how do you enhance what they can do in terms of the outcomes they want to drive? So yeah, anyway, honestly, it was a valuable conversation for folks out there.
Yeah. Terrific.
Well, thank you. That brings us to the end of the webinar. So the HR Tech Fit Check. To summarize the kind of 5 points that we went through today. So strategic fit, aligning your HR technology with your organization's broader strategic goals. To me, so fundamental. And as Rachel said, do it at the beginning, not at the end. It really should be the first piece of the project. Then the functional fit. So focusing on the features and capability that are really challenges for your business and which solutions meet them. Technology fit, make sure the vendor's tech aligns with your current and future states. Cultural fit, really assess the technology vendor, the implementation partner, and really, as Rachel said, also you as a client and how you can work with those two partners together. And then finally, the commercial fit. How can you communicate this to the executives and the board to truly demonstrate the ROI? Remember that selecting the HR tech vendor isn't just about the features. It's about how they truly work and fit your organization. Thank you so much for everyone's time today. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Rach. Remember, as a kind of a bit of a summary, selecting the HR tech partner isn't about the flashiest features. It's truly about finding the organization that works with you from a functional, strategic, and cultural perspective. We pulled together a couple of extra assets for you to read or listen to after today's webinar. We've mentioned ECMS during today's webinar. Here's their podcast that we've referenced that you can learn more about their HR tech transformation journey. And also 2 assets that you can download, the HR Tech Buyer's Guide and also learn how to accelerate your HR solution selection process. Thank you so much for joining us again.